If you've ever felt trapped in that endless top 40 loop, you know the feeling. Same songs, same sounds, same safe choices. Like the world hit repeat and lost the button to try something new. Today, I want to introduce you to a crew that's built to do the exact opposite. Change the station entirely. Bullet End Flight is based right in the heart of the 505, Albuquerque, where the green chili runs hot and the creative energy somehow runs even hotter. And when I say Bullet End Flight, I'm not talking about one single project or one single vibe. Think of it more like a parent company to a whole family of artistic misfits. People who don't fit neatly into the usual boxes, and honestly, don't want to. At the center of everything is a mission that's pretty simple to say, but not always easy to pull off. Elevate the voices that usually get talked over. The artists who get labeled too niche, or too different, or that weird one, too Albuquerque. Whatever that's supposed to mean. If you've ever heard something like that about your work, this is your invitation to pull up a chair. Because that's not a deal breaker here. That's the whole point. Bullet End Flight is built around inclusivity, creative community building, and giving underrepresented artists the megaphone they deserve. Not as a trend, not as a marketing angle, but as the core identity. It's a response to a creative world that can feel gated, filtered, and overly polished, where the most interesting voices get told to tone it down so they can be easier to sell. And here's where it gets fun. Bullet End Flight doesn't believe in staying in one lane. Because why would you? Why drive a sedan when you could take a spaceship? The whole approach is more like, what does human expression look like across every format? And then going after all of it. Let's start with music, because that's a major part of the DNA. The mindset here isn't pick a genre and stay in it. It's more like, what's the vibe, and does it hit? That can mean the spiritual charge of gospel, the late-night pulse of house music, the smooth storytelling and emotion of R&B, or even that classic country charm where life falls apart but somehow the drink is still cold. It's not about fitting into a category. It's about making something that feels alive. But it doesn't stop at music. There's a strong dedication to the spoken word too. Podcasts that get into the real stuff, not just surface-level chatter, and poetry that doesn't play nice. The kind that lands heavy, the kind that says what people avoid saying, the kind that reminds you words can still be dangerous in the best way. Then there's film and TV writing. Getting into scripts that actually have a heartbeat. Not another recycled reboot of a reboot. Not something designed by committee to offend the fewest people possible. The focus is on stories with soul. Stories with perspective. Stories that sound like they came from real lives, in real places, with real edges. And of course, the stage. Because there is nothing like live performance. It's unpredictable, it's electric, and yeah, anything can happen. And usually does. The stage is where art stops being an idea and becomes a moment, right in front of people who can feel it in real time. So why would an artist want to plug into something like this? Because being a starving artist has been romanticized for way too long, and it doesn't need to be the default. And being a lonely artist, trying to build everything by yourself, with no village, no network, no support, That's even worse. Bullet and Flight is about building that village on purpose. The goal is to take the talent that's been brewing in the Southwest, often overlooked, often underestimated, and project it outward. Not in a please notice us kind of way, but in a we're already here, and we're bringing the whole sound with us kind of way. Bullet and Flight positions itself as a launch pad, a safety net, and the hype you didn't realize you were missing. And let's be honest, a lot of people are tired of gatekeepers. Tired of needing permission. Tired of feeling like they have to sand down everything interesting about their work to be taken seriously. If that's you, this is a space that's built for finding your tribe. People who want loud, weird, real art, and who aren't afraid to make it together. If you want to get in the mix, deombase is https://justdominic. And if you want the visuals, you can find the YouTube channel at @justdominic_music. Bullet and Flight Music, LLC is the company behind it all. And the invitation is open. Check out what's being built, listen to what's coming out, and if you're ready to change the station, this is a good place to start.
Across the mesas and the canyon floor, we hear the sound of an open door. Not made of wood, but of a golden line. Not made of wood, but of a golden line. A frequency that's strictly divine. Pulse of the heart on a digital wire, catching the spark and the holy fire. Bullet in flight, heading for the goal. The signals moving through the heavy soul. Bullet in flight, taken to the air. A network reaching near the morning sun. Christ followers moving now as one, as one. Christ followers moving now as one, now as one. The airwaves carry what the Spirit knows over the fields where the river flows. We're building a temple out of resonance, unified in heart and with no fence. From the valley low and with no fence. From the valley low to the mountain high, caught in the stream of the bullet in flight. Bullet in flight, heading for the goal. The signals moving through the heavy soul. Bullet in flight, taken to the air. A network reaching near the morning sun. Christ followers moving now as one, as one. Christ followers moving now as one, now as one. Transmit the truth, transmit the truth. Launch the light, launch the light. One frequency, one frequency, one frequency in the dead of the night. Keep that signal strong, Christ followers. Bullet in Flight Radio, stay to the truth.
Today or tonight, I will recognize that no sorrow lasts forever, and that joy is always on the horizon. Yeah. So one of the trouble don't last always. One of the ideas that we look to help us kind of navigate through questions like the problem of evil, the seeming absence or silence of God at times, human suffering, which is the work of theodicy, trying to reconcile a good God with human suffering. In that way, it's important for us not to lose hope that even though we are surrounded by a critique of the Bible, we're surrounded by violence in the Bible. Seemingly, the people of God are being exiled constantly. God is using their enemies to punish and teach them lessons. Jesus is suffering at the hands of both the religious mind and of empire. And we're waiting and waiting with bated breath for Jesus to return. And so it can be difficult. It can be a difficult journey of being faithful to our religious practice. Hope is a part of that. We hope for what we don't see. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Soren Kierkegaard, the father of transcendental and existentialism thinking, would say that faith is a leap. We leap into faith because there are a lot of reasons that our faith might be kind of shaken at times, and that's okay. It's okay to sit with lament. Probably, I won't put a percentage on it, but a major representation of the Old Testament prophets are in lament. Jeremiah is the weeping prophet. There's a book called Lamentations, lamenting. The Psalms, the Proverbs are lamenting. A lot of that are questions, complaints. What's happening? Where is God in the midst of our struggle? And so to have joy in the midst of sorrow, to have hope in the midst of despair, is not really a paradox or a contradiction. It is something that is necessary. They balance each other. And so in the midst of darkness, there's the hope of light. In the midst of pain, there is the hope of relief. In the midst of sickness, there's the hope of either healing or resurrection. All of these are necessary talking points. Khalil Gibran kind of refers to that when he talks about joy and sorrow kind of existing together, and that they don't sit alone. They provide each other some level of company. Look down at the last paragraph if you have your devotion on tonight. It begins talking about Mother Nature, how Mother Nature it balances itself. Sometimes when there are wildfires, even though they cause great destruction, there is growth after that. There's new growth, new trees, new plants that are necessary sometimes because the larger trees seem to choke out the life or the sun from getting to the smaller plants. Just the same as in a lake. If there are too many large fish, they eat all the small fish. And so sometimes you have to remove the larger fish so that the other fish have a chance to grow and to eat and to survive. It is part of Mother Nature. That last sentence says, so the next time you're feeling sorrow, try to shift your perspective and look at it as if it's just clearing out space, making room for new joy. Amen to that. All right, let's grab our prayer together at the very bottom. Together, God of our silent tears, help us to understand the value of both sorrow and joy. Both are necessary parts of life. One is simply making space for the other. Amen, Amin, Ashe, Namaste, Namaskar, and so it is. All right, we're jumping
Before you get started
Yep.
in the teaching, they
Yep.
got in several people. Fred, let's see, CJ Henry. Oh, hey, Miss CJ. Let's see, Be Woke. Someone else I saw over on YouTube. Maybe it was LaSonia. They all said it was Frankie Beverly and Mays. So
Frankie Beverly and Mays. Yes. Thank you for that. That was like an itch that I couldn't reach. I couldn't reach that place on my back. And so thank you for sharing that. Yes. Thank you for that information. Great song. Okay. Week 106, Bishop Carlton Demetrius Pearson's The Gospel of Inclusion. Enjoy your stay at Club Dead. Do you getting the sense that Carlton is both a hopeful cynic and a satirist? He is that, especially as it comes to the religious mind or literal thinking. He has no bandwidth, no patience for that kind of thing. Okay, let's grab our discussion prompts for tonight. Number one, Which, if any, primary doctrines have you questioned? And so primary doctrines might be things that church councils established, something like the divinity of Christ, virgin births, probably resurrection, the oneness of the Trinity, things of that nature, the necessity of baptism, the idea of a second coming. Some of those are primary doctrines. I question all of them. I think you guys know that about me. But then secondary doctrines kind of get into the whys. It gets into what we would call epistemology. If you have your glossary of terms handy, look through and find the word epistemology. Epistemology is the study of how we know what we know. How can we know what we think we know? And so that deals with secondary doctrines, the interpretation, or what in academic circles we would call the hermeneutic, the diving into the behind the text kind of thing. Which, if any doctrines, primary doctrines, have you questioned? Brendan, something changed on my screen. Am I sharing a screen with you? Let me see if I can get out of this without messing anything up.
No, everything looks good.
I think. Okay. Something popped up in my browser. Here as Bishop Pearson defines primary doctrine. And so when we go into that tonight, it'll kind of help you situate yourself in that question. Number 2, can churches actually survive without a concept of hell? Not just, so let's put the word in there, not just survive, but grow and thrive. Can churches survive without a concept of hell? I'll add this to the conversation. I'm not answering it for you, but I will say this: if you will do some quantitative research, which involves a little bit of sociology, you might find that the churches that are growing in America are evangelical churches, MAGA churches, literal churches, homophobic churches, confessional churches. Jesus is the only way to God. Those who subscribe to an idea of hell. We must get people saved, and we have to save people from an eternal torture chamber called hell. Those are really the only churches that are growing in America. And so our mainline churches that kind of hold together rational thinking, they are educated people, they are liberal scholars, they're exegetes. They see a bigger and better vision and version, usually of God and of Jesus, which would be Methodists, Presbyterians, Episcopalians, Unitarians. Those type of churches are not growing, and they are dwindling. So just sit with that for a moment as we think about the state of the church, state of the union, state of the black church. There's all these kind of states that we make that we address at times. But what do we do with the knowledge, the quantitative knowledge, that only churches who believe in hell are growing? Churches who either don't believe in hell or don't bring it up that much in their teaching, that are more justice-centered, more inclusive, a little bit, hate to say this, more educated people and parishioners, pastors and parishioners, that those churches are not growing. They're either kind of sustaining in a stabilized pattern, or they are starting to kind of die off in some ways. That's an interesting idea, isn't it? Yeah, so what does that mean for Spirit and Truth Sanctuary that does not really have a concept of a punitive hell? We're considering an idea of a purgative hell. We certainly don't have an idea of a retributive hell. but we have an idea of a restorative hell, and we don't have an idea of an eternal hell, but we do have an idea of apokatastasis, or a temporary kind of correction or teaching in the afterlife, a redemptive idea. What does this mean for the future of inclusion? And what does it mean for the future of Spirit and Truth Sanctuary? I think it's an interesting question that we should sit with. And then thirdly, we'll have some space to discuss the teaching on Ruth this past Sunday. Ruth assimilated, took on a new culture, a new religion, kind of left her culture, left her people, left her religion. What do we think about assimilating to survive? Is Ruth surviving, or is she a sellout? Is she a cultural sellout? I don't know. I think we could look at it critically and also empathetically, couldn't we? We could look at it from two lenses. We could look at it from the lens of, look, sometimes an oppressed, migrant, disenfranchised, marginalized people kind of you got to do what you got to do sometimes. Can we look at it empathetically, or do we see Ruth as a cultural sellout that has no loyalty to the people of Moab and is willing to give up her God, her culture, to marry this guy? Is she a gold digger? Is she a sellout? And in that conversation, how do we situate Naomi, who seems like kind of a gold digging widow, securing not just stability for herself, but securing a future for herself? How do we situate Naomi in our conversation? And furthermore, how do we look at Orpah? So Naomi had two Moabitess daughters, both Ruth and Orpah. Orpah stayed with her people. She was willing to, she was kind of a ride or die Moabitess. She was willing to stay with her people. She did not want to give up her practice of religion or her culture or her people in order to survive. It's a very interesting, it's a complex conversation, isn't it? All right, let's jump into week 106. Enjoy your stay at Club Dead. We are once again in Carlton Demetrius Pearson's The Gospel of Inclusion. This is a quote from the book of Isaiah. I actually, this comes up a lot in my preaching. If you want a secondary quote from Isaiah, the conversation picks back up in chapter 54. So this is what we call Deutero-Isaiah, or second Isaiah. So most scholars, critical scholars, feel like the first, I think it is chapter 1 through 39. You can fact check me on that, but I think I'm right about that. 1 through 39 chapters of Isaiah are credited to some sort of sense of the prophet Isaiah, the historical prophet Isaiah. But then 40 through 54 is this other writing. It's another author, it seems like this. It's syntactically, it is linguistically different, and sometimes even the themes are different. And so it causes scholars quite a bit of trouble to ascribe just one writer to the book of Isaiah. That's just a little behind the scenes. Here it is, Isaiah 45 in verse 7. I, speaking of the Lord, there is no other God. This is kind of hearkening back, here we go, to the Deuteronomistic history. In the book of Deuteronomy, we get what's called the Shema. The Shema is a statement, I am the Lord God and there is no other. Okay, so it's kind of it's both a critique to binary thinking, to an idea of good and evil, or God and devil. I am God, I'm all there is. It's also used to prop up monotheism, although most scholars would say early Judaism was not monotheistic. They were henotheistic, or they practiced what's called monolatry, a supreme God, but the presence of the existence of other gods. So you can look, both of those words are in your glossary of terms. So here is again a revisiting of the Deuteronomistic type history, or the Deuteronomist writing. I am the Lord, there is no other. I form the light and create darkness. I bring prosperity or peace in the New King James, and create evil or calamity. I, the Lord, do all these things. So when we start sitting with the idea of evil, suffering, devil, principalities, powers, divine councils, fallen angels, devils, demons, Hasatan, Satans, we have to sit with Isaiah's idea that God is saying through Deutero or 2nd Isaiah that there is no other God, that Yahweh, Adonai, creates good and evil, forms the light and the darkness, brings peace and calamity. One God, not a Zoroastrian God of of a good God and a bad God, a divided universe. Okay, but one God, and so again we hearken back to the metaphor in Genesis, not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because perhaps there's this idea, there's this unspoken idea that we may not yet have the capacity to understand how all things really do work together. And of course, that can lean toward apologetics. It can lean toward this answer of free will, the free will lineup, free will defense. I'm not sure I believe in any of it, but they are certainly part of the conversation. All right, let's jump in to the teaching tonight. The terrifying mystery of hell is the number one tactic Christians have used to bring people to their knees, to the altar, to a moment of repentance, many times to salvation. I mentioned on Sunday, I think I said it wrong. It is not Pascal's argument. It is Pascal's wager. So I wanted to clarify that. It's the same person, but it's not called Pascal's argument. It's called Pascal's wager. And it is, hey, you should believe in you should confess Jesus just in case. Just in case. Believe in God just in case there is a God. And I find that a very thin wager. If we think that God is all-knowing, would God not know that we are just confessing or saying we believe to try to trick an omniscient God? How do we factor that in? Okay. During the first 5 centuries of the New Testament, so early church history, called the patristic period, that's in your glossary of terms, the patristics, there were many different views of hell. So this is not monolithic. There is no unifying framework in early Christian church history of one idea of hell. There are many different ideas of what the post-mortem life looks like. If it's not heaven, is it purgatory? Is it a holding space? Is it Sheol, a place of the dead? Is it a purgative place? Is it torture? Is it temporary? Is it eternal? There's a lot of ambiguity around it. Excuse me, I got some dry mouthedness. Each supported a belief in hell, but differed in terms of what happened in hell. How long a person stayed there it is. Okay, so if we are bringing into this conversation justice-oriented theology, specifically Black liberation theology, Latin liberation, Hispanic liberation theology, womanist voices, feminist voices, how do we justify a just God with no hell? How does the slave and slave master go to the same heaven immediately? How do those who hoard wealth and the poor, the impoverished, go to the same heaven immediately? That is certainly a problematic question, isn't it? Yeah, I think it's something that's worthy of our bandwidth. How long a person stays there and why a person was sentenced to hell. Interesting. This is the difference between primary and secondary doctrine or doctrines. And it circles back to my original inclusion point. Doctrine is the problem. So let's pause for a moment and talk about fear as a social control. One of the conspiracies that I don't necessarily believe or disbelieve, it's out there in the airwaves, is that in the I'm not sure if it's called the catacombs or a place where the Catholic Church in Rome holds certain documents, there is a conspiracy theory that coming through Gospels and writers that were not included in the canonized Bible that we have, and even some of the books that we have that were altered, that there were sayings of Jesus that completely redacted the idea of a hell. Any type of afterlife post-mortem torture. Well, I'm not saying it's true or untrue, but if there is any validity to that, why would those things be kept secret from humanity? Why would the idea of a universal salvation, a finished work of Calvary, which, again, remember, I don't believe in original sin, so I believe Jesus spoke our language, which is the language of blood. I don't believe God required blood to forgive. But if we're talking in that way, let's talk that game, okay? That is the game we're playing. If Jesus did finish it at Calvary, and salvation is not dependent on faith or confession, and the whole world has been reconciled to God, then there is no hell. Okay, that's a difficult talking point for liberation theology. So what does that mean? We can do whatever the hell we want and not even go to hell. That's dangerous, isn't it? It would require a lot of self-government, a lot of awakening to morality and ethical, religious, and just social practice, how you show up and move through the world. So if the universal church, the Catholic Church, has information about a finished work of the cross, that there is no hell coming from the mouth of Jesus, and they don't release it, is there a fear that without a future punishment, would people cast off restraint? Would people not be law-abiding citizens? Would we just turn into animals? And are we not already acting that way? Those with the biggest guns, with the biggest armies, with the most money, colonize, conquest, take things from those with less. And those are many times Christian nations acting immorally, because we have bought into the idea of might is right instead of morality being right. I think that's an interesting conversation. The ethical concern is that coercion-based religion can produce shame, anxiety, conformity, and it can be used to police behavior and marginalize dissenters rather than cultivate compassion and justice. So let me offer you a question, and we'll jump back into the teaching. Who gets to declare one interpretation as primary and then enforce it? So let's revisit what Bishop Pearson said in that first part of that paragraph, that the first 5 centuries of the early Christian church, there was not a single monolithic concept of hell. So if that's true, then who gets to decide on one concept? There was not one Christianity. There were many diverse expressions of Christianity. Yeah. And so who gets to decide? We're going to have to choose one. We don't need the diversity of thinking. We just need to all agree on one Christianity. Who gets the authority for that? Who gets to decide that? I think it's a worthwhile question. All right, let's jump back in. Primary doctrine teaches a basic belief that there is a hell or that Jesus is coming again. Those are kind of primary doctrines. As Paul would say, by this time you ought to be teachers, yet someone needs to teach you again or revisit these elementary principles. Interesting. Secondary doctrine, as opposed to primary doctrine, teaches the interpretation of that belief. What happens in hell? How long is hell? Or when is Jesus due to arrive? What is eschatology? Both Jesus and Paul were apocalyptic prophets. They perceived the end of the world was upon them. What do we do with the knowledge that it didn't happen? How do we reposition ourselves, knowing that when we get behind the text into secondary doctrines, what if Jesus and Paul missed it? What if they missed it and the second coming isn't happening immediately? How do we do this? It's interesting. Yep. Welcome to Spirit and Truth. Secondary doctrine is open to question and interpretation. Primary doctrine, in most cases, is not. It is concrete. It is absolute. It is literal. It is not open for debate or for what our Jewish rabbis might call the midrash, the getting into the yeshiva or the study hall and binding and loosing, opening mysteries, closing mysteries, kind of working through the ambiguity of the text. As believers and theologians, we are not supposed to disagree on primary issues, even though we do. There are 30,000+ Christian denominations. Can you even conceive of that? 30,000+ Christian denominations. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think in some ways it's a very good thing that people have their own agency. It becomes a bad thing when we can't come together over issues like humanity, justice, clean water, the rights of those who are being disenfranchised. That's when it becomes somewhat, it leads into disunity. Even though we do, but we can disagree on secondary doctrinal distinctions. In these discussions, many possibilities of hell play out. Hell is everlasting, but not endless. I find that interesting. It can be ageless without being endless. Hell will last, perhaps eternally, but those who go there may not necessarily be there forever, and so on. So we get a lot of paradox. We get a lot of counter-testimony. So I want to bring to your memory the Greek word aion, A-I-O-N. Look it up if you'd like to. Aion, which is kind of like the English word for an eon. We use it, sometimes it's used as an age or a period of time, an era. Or as it's used at times, aeonius, both aeon or aeonius, can be rendered and is translated as eternal, but it also can mean of an age abiding, age dearing, or age long. So you get this Greek word that is ambiguous, and if you think about the Greek word for love. You get agape, you get eros, you get phileo. There are several different words for love that mean different things in the Greek language. And so trying to establish one way of understanding the word aeon or aeonius is probably not a sincere approach to etymology or to the language here. Okay, so when it says you will be cast into the lake of fire eternally or forever, the Greek word there is aeon or aeonius, which could be translated as eternal or as for an age. Don't you find that interesting that it has some ambiguity to it? So what does that really mean? Some of what gets treated as primary or fear-based certainty about hell may actually rest on a secondary interpretive choice, exactly why doctrine becomes the problem for inclusion. So instead of letting it breathe, letting the ambiguities, letting the questions resonate, we want to answer it from a kind of unifying framework, which I think is an injustice to the text. Aeonius can mean age long or everlasting. Translations often reveal as much about a tradition's theology as they do about the Greek itself, especially in texts about judgment. So what does that mean? What that really means is that the translation is dependent on the translators. Our interpretation of a word or of a text is informed by us, our experience, our our lenses, our filters, our indoctrinations, our prejudgments or prejudices, our biases. Yeah, so how do we really get an accurate translation when the word has some ambiguity? I think it's a test of consciousness providing us a mirror, not to establish accuracy, but to see ourselves. Why would I want hell to be eternal? And why would I want hell to be temporary? That's revealing of the self, is it not? Yeah, I want people to burn eternally, to be held away from God eternally. Or, well, in a justice narrative, I think it's a temporary purging in some ways. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that you've mastered the Bible. It just means you've chosen one interpretation of a word over the other, which is not revealing God, it's revealing us, right? It's a revealing consciousness. All right. Psalm 139, 8 says, if I go to heaven, you're there. If I make my bed in the depths or hell or Sheol, you are there. Where can I go to escape from your presence? The scripture indicates that God himself will be in hell as well as in heaven. Let me give you a little glimpse into some Orthodox, at least Eastern or Greek Orthodox Christianity. They do have a concept of hell, but the pain that is felt there is not because God is torturing. Listen to this. This is really neat, I think. It's because in the presence of a completely loving God that is purging you of anything that's not agape love, letting go of homophobia, letting go of racism, letting go of misogyny, releasing greed and the desire for power, you feel the pain of something being purged out of you, but it's not torture. It's being in the presence of agape love. I can go with that. As a theologian who has studied teachings on hell for 20 years, I can sit with that concept of hell, that it both satisfies justice, okay, and it reconciles a loving God. So it satisfies the fact that those who are unjust in this lifetime, they don't just go to heaven and start bouncing on clouds and singing on their harps. But it also doesn't indict God as a failure. It brings God into the process of redemption as a purgative, a purging, a redemptive, a restorative God who is neither blind to injustice nor is willing to abandon creation eternally in a torture chamber, because that is just continuing suffering. It's not solving the problem of evil. It's just kind of putting it away from us. I can go with that idea that in the presence of an all purely loving God, anything in us that is not love, we might sense pain, but it's not torture. It's just us releasing, being purged of anything that is not godly love. I can lean into that a bit. Okay, let's skip down to, let's see, middle of that paragraph, that will show me the path of life, and that presence is fullness of joy. Even in hell, even in a purging, there is still a joy that's set before us. The psalmist uses the Hebrew word Sheol or Sheol, which refers to the grave, but the King James mistranslates it as hell. It's not really hell, it's just the grave. The more accurate modern translation redefines it as Hades. That's the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible of what we call the Septuagint, which is usually a reference to the grave. The word hell or Sheol was sometimes used to refer to God's judgment upon a foreign nation as punishment for their crimes against his people or their attempts to thwart his plan. In no case was it reference to an eternal judgment and fire. Don't you find that interesting? That is a New Testament kind of an advent that happens in the New Testament. All right, let's jump to the last paragraph. The concept of a God who systematically, eternally tortures his enemies is one of great errors in religious thinking. The conflict stems from this fact. The God of Christianity and a God who is Christian are two different concepts. So a God that we look to in a Christian religion is very different from a God who is a Christian. You guys feeling that? The God of Christianity, or the God that we know that is bigger than any specific religion, is a God of eternal love, grace, and mercy. However, the Christian God that was basically formed through Augustine, through Constantine, which is both religio-political and really kind of on the backdrop of Augustine's dealing with his own shame and guilt, okay, where we get the ideas of original sin from. The Christian God has become something else entirely, frighteningly cruel, unforgiving, legalistic, and draconian. What does draconian mean? Draconian is a word that is used to say that something is inflexible, it's rigid, it's archaic, it's antiquitous, it's ancient in its moral applications in some ways, okay? God is Lord, but not the Lord in that idea of a Christian God. He is the one who uses hell to intimidate masses of ignorant, innocent people.
True, there's a fellowship waiting for you. Christ Followers Network on Bullet and Flight Radio. Oh, on Bullet and Flight
If you've ever felt trapped in that endless top 40 loop, you know the feeling. Same songs, same sounds, same safe choices. Like the world hit repeat and lost the button to try something new. Today, I want to introduce you to a crew that's built to do the exact opposite. Change the station entirely. Bullet and Flight is based right in the heart of the 505, Albuquerque, where the green chili runs hot and the creative energy somehow runs even hotter. And when I say Bullet and Flight, I'm not talking about one single project or one single vibe. Think of it more like a parent company to a whole family of artistic misfits. People who don't fit neatly into the usual boxes, and honestly, don't want to. At the center of everything is a mission that's pretty simple to say, but not always easy to pull off. Elevate the voices that usually get talked over. The artists who get labeled too niche, or too different, or that weird one, too Albuquerque. Whatever that's supposed to mean. If you've ever heard something like that about your work, this is your invitation to pull up a chair. Because that's not a deal breaker here. That's the whole point. Bullet and Flight is built around inclusivity, creative community building, and giving underrepresented artists the megaphone they deserve. Not as a trend, not as a marketing angle, but as the core identity. It's a response to a creative world that can feel gated, filtered, and overly polished, where the most interesting voices get told to tone it down so they can be easier to sell. And here's where it gets fun. Bullet and Flight doesn't believe in staying in one lane. Because why would you? Why drive a sedan when you could take a spaceship? The whole approach is more like, what does human expression look like across every format? And then going after all of it. Let's start with music, because that's a major part of the DNA. The mindset here isn't pick a genre and stay in it. It's more like, what's the vibe, and does it hit? That can mean the spiritual charge of gospel, the late-night pulse of house music, the smooth storytelling and emotion of R&B, or even that classic country charm where life falls apart but somehow the drink is still cold. It's not about fitting into a category. It's about making something that feels alive. But it doesn't stop at music. There's a strong dedication to the spoken word too. Podcasts that get into the real stuff, not just surface-level chatter, and poetry that doesn't play nice. The kind that lands heavy, the kind that says what people avoid saying, the kind that reminds you words can still be dangerous in the best way. Then there's film and TV writing. Getting into scripts that actually have a heartbeat. Not another recycled reboot of a reboot. Not something designed by committee to offend the fewest people possible. The focus is on stories with soul. Stories with perspective. Stories that sound like they came from real lives, in real places, with real edges. And of course, the stage.
Because there is nothing like live performance.
It's unpredictable, it's electric, and yeah, anything can happen. And usually does. The stage is where art stops being an idea and becomes a moment, right in front of people who can feel it in real time. So why would an artist want to plug into something like this? Because being a starving artist has been romanticized for way too long, and it doesn't need to be the default. And being a lonely artist, trying to build everything by yourself, with no village, no network, no support, that's even worse. Bullet and Flight is about building that village on purpose. The goal is to take the talent that's been brewing in the Southwest, often overlooked, often underestimated, and project it outward. Not in a please notice us kind of way, but in a we're already here, and we're bringing the whole sound with us kind of way. Bullet and Flight positions itself as a launch pad, a safety net, and the hype you didn't realize you were missing. And let's be honest, a lot of people are tired of gatekeepers. Tired of needing permission. Tired of feeling like they have to sand down everything interesting about their work to be taken seriously. If that's you, this is a space that's built for finding your tribe. People who want loud, weird, real art, and who aren't afraid to make it together.
If you want to get in the mix, the home base is https://justdominic.
And if you want the visuals, you can find the YouTube channel at Just Dominic Music. Bullet and Flight Music, LLC is the company behind it all. And the invitation is open. Check out what's being built, listen to what's coming out, and if you're ready to change the station, this is a good place to start.
Your story, our station.